we came to Little Mud River, which is, of course, the most difficult section of the ICW.
We're talking to someone today who has done the U.S. East Coast ICW maybe more times than any other sailor. And if you're headed south, whether it's to the Bahamas or just running to Florida from the colder temperatures at the end of the summer, the ICW can be a daunting concept for newer cruisers. Today, we're here to help. Having done the ICW myself, I know stories are awash with tales about shallow depths, hitting bottom, tide charts. Which cruising guides do I follow? Where is it safe to stop? Where do we get fuel? Should we skip Georgia or try to go through it? Well, if you're newer to this sort of travel, there is an easier way, and it's called a rally. The Sail to the Sun Rally is in its 10th year of running cruisers in a big group of sailboats from the Chesapeake down to Miami, all together, sailing together, anchoring together, going out for dinner together, safety in numbers, and a relationship building experience for everyone involved. Today we're talking to Wally, the organizer of the Sail to the Sun Rally. Wally has done the ICW dozens of times and has a set way of doing it to maximize safety, camaraderie, and fun. Wally's Sail to the Sun Rally isn't just designed to get you to Miami safely. It'll also teach you things that you need to know if you're headed further on after Miami. Things like selecting anchorages, traveling in groups, buddy boating, provisioning, rafting up, and weather windows. Let's meet Wally. Yeah, if like it makes the East Coast much easier, especially for beginners. You get to run in a pack, so if there's any problems, you have help. Like it's just there's so much going for it.
Yep.
Um, why did you get it started? Like, what was the motivation?
I'm not the idea wasn't mine. A friend of a mutual friend of ours, in fact, Paul Willett in Sarnia. He and I were sitting having a cold one evening, and he suggested that, why don't you create a? He says, well, you've got the resources and the background. He says, why don't you create a rally format trip down the ICW? A lot of people would find that a lot more comfortable. He says they want to feel comfortable about the trip. They want to have some friends around. And it made sense, and I thought about it, and I eventually developed the idea, and I got one of the magazines that I was writing for at the time to sponsor it the first year. And then I ran it myself the second year, and that was 10 years ago. We're on our 10th anniversary trip now.
So, for all the sailors out there, what would you tell them? What's the reason to go with you? Why would they want to come with you on the rally instead of trying to go it alone?
Well, my original thinking on this, and it's based on the fact that I'd done the rally enough times and had the own, or not done the rally, done the ICW enough times, and had my own thinking about what it was like with my memories of the first trip, was that people want the reassurance of knowing what's going to be ahead. Okay, they want to know where the shoals are going to be. They want to know what conditions to expect. They want to know where they can reprovision. Okay, this is all stuff that it's findable, but it's a lot of work to find it. It's a lot of preparation, a lot of planning. So my original thinking was, I'm going to make this trip a lot easier for people, which is what has happened, of course. But the real motivation for a lot of people, and I didn't expect this, when you take off, and you know this because you've gone cruising, you leave your job, you leave your family, you leave your friends, you leave everything behind. Okay. You've totally lost your roots. And although people don't necessarily understand it, that is both a very brave and a really intimidating thing to do. You're on your own. And I mean, let's face it, in today's world, there's not a lot of occasions when you find yourself totally on your own. So what has happened is that people have found a new community, a family, from going on Sail to the Sun. Okay, they're fulfilling a goal, sailing south. A goal that many of them have held for their lifetimes. Uh, and all of a sudden they're sharing that goal with a group of other people. It's a group adventure. It makes it more fun. It makes it more reassuring. All these good things. And the intriguing part of it is that I thought that the big contribution would be the assistance that I was able to give as the leader, in all the technical aspects. For most people, the big thing has been the amazing friendships they've made. These people, we have a Facebook page for each year. These people stay in touch. They go to parties together. They go cruising together. They get together for anniversaries and weddings, and the friendships, the depth of the friendships that have been developed are just, I can't tell you how proud I am of that.
I love it. Oh man, I wouldn't even have expected that to be like one of the big highlights. Like I definitely would like having a leader that's done it, knowing where to go, where not to go, because you get on the internet and start researching a trip down the ICW and all these horror stories. Don't do this. Make sure you do this. Don't stop here. Do stop here. But you've done it so many times. I would think for me, just following somebody who has all the knowledge so that I don't have to be worried about it. But you're right. The camaraderie of it is an unexpected benefit and magical for sure.
When I did the ICW the first time, which was a little over 20 years ago, um, I was coming down Chesapeake Bay, and I had a great day sailing. The boat was just booming along. I had a nice wind off the quarter, and at the end of the day, I turned up into, if I remember right, it was Milford Haven. As I got into the bay and the winds kind of dropped because I was in an enclosed area, I tried to bring the Genoa in, and the furler fouled up. So I'm at the bow of the boat fighting with the furler, having no fun at all. Racing back, I'm single-handing, of course, racing back to the cockpit to make sure I don't go aground. Finally get the furler down, turn around, look at my chart, look up, and went for the wrong bridge and put the boat aground. So I'm sitting there, and I'm frustrated. I've had a great day sailing, but I'm frustrated. I'm happy. I'm intimidated. So I got the boat out from where it was grounded. I turned around, found the right bridge. I spent 3 days getting my courage back. It's those kind of situations that I want to help other people avoid. That kind of intimidation, that kind of frustration, that lack of knowing. Like every morning somebody gets up, and I've created a report for them. Okay, here's what to expect today. Here's where we're going. Here's any difficult spots. Here's how to handle them. Here's what the currents will be. Here's what the expected weather will be. In other words, I've done all the work that they would have done themselves to perform the day, but I've done it with the knowledge ahead of time of what's coming. So, for example, I can say to them, when you get to the red 208, the tide is coming in, make sure that you give it an extra 100 yards distance before you round it, because that current will push you onto the shoal there. Okay. Now, ask me how I know that can happen. Okay. 208 is as you know, is down by just after Little Mud River.
Yeah.
Down in Georgia. We came to Little Mud River, which is, of course, the most difficult section of the ICW. And it's notorious for being shallow. It shoals out to about 4 feet at low tide. Now, if you really look at the tide charts, if you've done it a couple of times, if you pay attention, you know that an hour after the low tide, it'll cover a boat of 5 feet will go through. An hour and a half after, a boat of 6 feet will go through. So we showed up with the rally boats, and I think that year there was 14 or 15 of us, can't remember exactly. And there's a whole bunch of boats milling around, and you can see they're wondering, what do we do? What do we do? So being the dummy that I am, I got on the radio and I said, okay, all you boats hanging around here, this is the red boat Gypsy Wind. I'm going to lead the way through because I know where I'm going. I've done this before. Follow in behind myself and my group. I said, if you have a deep draft, stay to the back of the lineup. I said, we will get through comfortably. And then I headed into it. And it was an hour and a little bit after low tide. And I prayed every inch of the way that I didn't go aground, because if I had, I would have never lived it down. And we got through. All the boats got through comfortably. But I'll admit, my heart was in my throat doing it. It was putting it out there, and I managed it. But that's the key to it. If you've done the research, if you know what you're doing, it's not, the ICW really isn't that hard. But the research and the background knowledge, it takes time to get it.
It kind of brings me to my next question. So if somebody wants to come on the rally with you, what are the restrictions for boats?
I'm really open. We've had everything from 26 footers to 50. I think the biggest one was 51. It was the Captain Ron boat. What's that? A 51 Formosa, if I remember right. That was lots of fun. It got lots of attention. We've had single handers. We've had people well into their 70s. We've had young people. We've had families with children. Generally, I'm good with any boat, as long as, even trawlers. We had trawlers, of course, and even power boats, provided they're willing to travel at the slow speeds that we do. Because let's face it, we're going to be doing 5, 6, maybe 6.5 knots at the best. But as long as they're willing to deal with that, I don't care what boat it is. I'm agnostic towards boats that way.
How long do you usually spend getting to Miami? I understand it's not rushed. You don't want to be in a hurry. You want to stop and see the sights. What's your usual time frame?
Well, we leave about a week after, 5 to 6 days after the Annapolis boat show, because everybody wants to check out the show. And we leave from Hampton usually 5, 6 days after that. And we take 2 months. So like, for example, we'll stop in Charleston for 2 or 3 days. We'll stop in Hilton Head for a day or two. We'll stop in Beaufort, North Carolina for at least 2 days. The whole point is people have heard so many stories about the ICW, about how intimidating it is and how unpleasant it is. And part of my goal is to teach people this is a great trip. There's lots of fascinating stuff to do. I mean, some of the stuff I've seen in the ICW, going through Myrtle Beach one year, motoring along. I'm going north on my own, and I'm motoring along, and I look over to the side, and there's a park, and there's a guy walking an elephant through the park. And I looked at the guy in a little powerboat beside me and said, "There's an elephant in the park." And he looks at me and says, "Yeah." And then away he goes. And I thought, oh, that's different. It turns out there was a small private zoo not far away. I didn't know that. Another part, just a little bit south of there, there's a band of lemurs, which are part of a research project on St. Catharines Island. There's a kazoo factory in Beaufort, South Carolina. I mean, there's all kinds of them. Every year I do the trip, I find out something new and interesting. One of the favorite tours for the rally is the rum distilleries up in North Carolina.
If you're underway and you've got your fleet, what do you do if somebody breaks down? I imagine that's happened.
It has happened. It happened the first trip. It happened within the first half hour of the very first sail to the sun. One of the guys, Bob Figs, whose boat was Love and Luck. And I used to nickname his boat Love and Luckless, because if something was going to go wrong, it was going to happen to Bob. But his prop shaft broke. And we had left a bit early that morning from Hampton because we wanted to get into the Dismal Swamp early because the weather was going bad. And if we got in quickly before the winds kicked up, we're nice and protected. We've got 2 days to go through the swamp, then another day at Elizabeth City, and the winds would have died down and made for a nice crossing at Albemarle Sound. Bob's propeller shaft broke, so we had to get him to get his anchor down. We had to call for a tow for him. I notified the Coast Guard that there was an issue going on. We got a hold one of the guys on the trip that year. He was very well known in the industry. He'd worked for a couple of major organizations. So he made a couple of phone calls, and we found a repair, a marina that would take Bob in real quickly and do the repair real quick. And sure enough, that's what happened. We had to continue on. Bob got the repair done, and he rejoined us about 3 days later. Now you got to think, like, this is another advantage of a group like the rally. People want to be nice to us, so they got his boat in, they got it hauled, blocked, hauled the prop shaft out, found a new one, installed it, and had him underway in time to catch up to us about 75 to 100 miles further down the line.
Wow.
So yeah, so I mean, we get real good cooperation from the marinas and everybody. Another year, the one couple, and they're a Canadian couple, as a matter of fact, from Toronto. They had a young son, and great people. I keep in touch with them every time I see them at the Toronto Boat Show. But their boat had a minor breakdown in was it Fort Lauderdale, just south of Fort Lauderdale, right at the end of the rally. So they came into the final anchorage under tow with Boat US, and they just said, "We're not missing the final party." So we all cheered them as they came in, and they joined the party, and we had a good time. Considering the number of boats that have gone south with me, over 100 now, we've had 2 breakdowns and one threatening breakdown where the guys he had one of those dry PS, what do they call those?
The packing seal, yeah.
He had one of those dry boxes, and it started to leak. That we thought he thought that he was going to be sinking. It happened right in the Albemarle Sound just before the Alligator Pungo Canal. So he called for a tow, and we got him under tow. We got him to a marina, and he got fixed and underway in a couple of days and rejoined the rally.
So if one of our readers were to join the rally, are you expecting them to pay for marinas, or do you try to provide a lot of anchorages? Like, how many marinas would they expect to have to pay for?
We go to marinas almost every night for the first 5 weeks, and the reason for that is that the anchorages on the way south are not all that large, are usually are not all that large. You know, like fitting in 4 or 5 boats is fine. Fitting in 10 or 15 is a problem. If we're in the middle of the pack going south, the anchorage is going to be crowded even with or without us. So I pre-book all the marinas ahead of time. In other words, Dowry Creek Marina, for example, Steve knows that we're going to be showing up with 16 boats. He knows the lengths, the widths, and everything else, and he's got the dockage reserved for us. Okay, and that's the only way I can work it. The reason for that is that if we get really bad weather, and in the fall you can get some pretty nasty weather, some pretty strong winds in that. I don't want to be in a tight anchorage with a bunch of boats, or with a bunch of boats and not enough room for them. So we pre-book the marinas. Now, because of the time of year, it's tough to get discounts, but they'll often do things like throw parties or throw a wine and cheese. We might get a gas discount, stuff like that. You know, I don't have a lot of negotiating room there, unfortunately, but the marinas treat us super well. And it's a comfort to know that you have a safe place to be at the end of the night. And often when we anchor out, we'll do things like dinghy raft ups. And one year we were anchored out in Peck Lake in Florida, which is a gorgeous stop. And one of the guys had Captain Ron, so the video. So he got his projector, and we watched Captain Ron as a dinghy raft up on his mainsail.
I have to say from experience too, everything you're describing is a very good primer to what to expect when you get to the Caribbean, because everything you're exposing these people to, the raft offs and marinas versus anchoring and traveling in packs and communicating every morning and sort of getting on the same page as your fellow cruisers that you're going to be running with is natural when you get to the Caribbean, because like that's what everybody does. So you're giving them sort of a little bit of a cruising 101 as they go with you, which is wonderful. They know what to expect.
That's it. That's part of the reason for the rally too. Most of the time, the people who join me are first-time cruisers. They may be accomplished sailors, but they're first-time cruisers. And what I want to do between Hampton and Virginia is I want them to have a really, really good sense of what cruising is about. So all of those things are deliberate. They by the time they get to the Bahamas or wherever it is they're going, they're going to have a sense of what to expect and what to do and how to deal with situations.
Have you had any experience with insurance companies? Maybe this is just completely irrelevant, but a lot of insurance companies are looking for miles or looking for things that the captain has done. Have you had any experience with how doing rallies might impact somebody's ability to get insurance or get cheaper insurance or to appease their insurance company in some way by running in a rally or running in a pack? Is that even a thing?
I've never had that question before. I would be inclined to say that if somebody's coming south in the rally, they could say to their insurance company, you know, we're in a rally. We have a qualified, competent captain who's leading the pack. And he has a record of successful rallies where people get safely to their destination without problems. Yeah, and, you know, I can back that up if it was ever necessary.
Yeah.
Funny story about rallies. Years ago, I did a rally to Cuba when it was still legal for Americans to go to Cuba. And we sailed out of Key West on charter boats. I had to leave my boat in the Bahamas, and the dog and I flew into Key West to pick up the charter boat. And one of the issues, of course, was the charter company wanted bona fides. They wanted to know, who is this guy?
Yeah.
So I told the guy who owned the charter company, I said, tell them that I'm the guy who wrote the cruising guide for waterway guide for Cuba.
I think what you're doing is right up the alley of like Practical Sailor, and everything that we do is like try to get more people into sailing, make it easier to do, make it safe, teach people seamanship, and everything you're doing is right up that alley. If somebody wants to reach you and they're interested in doing this thing, how is it? Just go to sailtothesun.com, or how should they get a hold of you?
That would be the easiest way. Go to sailtothesun.com. While you're on the page, a little window will pop up, and you can send me an email directly from that window, and I'll get back to you with answers on whatever it is that you need to know.
Excellent.
So, but pretty much all the information is there that we've discussed, and a bunch more, an explanation. But you know, if I had to make it short, it's a rally format. I bring you comfortably and safely and enjoyably, especially enjoyably, south from Hampton to, and if somebody's coming from the Great Lakes, from Ontario, from Toronto, whatever, Michigan, doesn't matter, I'll help guide them that distance from there down to the Chesapeake Bay. because I've done that portion of the trip a number of times as well. And that's it. That's just part of the deal. It's I get it. I did the thing on my own one time. I didn't have anywhere near the resources that are available now. It was intimidating every day. Like what's coming next? What should I expect? The resources that are available today were not available then. And there were some challenges, lots of challenges, lots of days I woke up and I thought, geez, I'd really just rather hang out. But cold weather was chasing me and I wanted to get south. If I can leave the viewers with one magic phrase to get through every single problem on the ICW, it's a 3-word phrase. Okay, repeat after me: half tide rising. If you're
Half tide rise.
concerned, go through it. Half tide rising. Everybody together now. Half tide rising.
Yeah.
That's my mantra. If I'm concerned, I just wait for half tide, and that's part of the planning too, is knowing where the problems will be and setting yourself up in your passage so that when you come to a certain place where there's a problem, again, refer to Hell's Gate or Little Mud River. It's planned so that we get through at a half tide rising situation where even if somebody did go aground, the rising tide is going to take them off.
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
that's just part of the planning, and that's something you learn after you've done the trip a few times.
I hope you enjoyed the interview with Wally. If you want to reach him, sailtothesunrally.com. It costs money to join the rally, but it might just be the easiest way to get down the East Coast and meet some folks doing the same thing you are. Some of my best lifelong friends are people I met while out cruising. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel. And half tide rising. That's a great piece of advice. If you have a piece of advice to share, please leave it in the comments below for the other sailors. Let's talk about it. I'll see you next time.